Welcome to WMB. Unfortunately, it's just M today. Wes and Ben are not here today, but in a show of resourcefulness at the Young Turks, we have gotten a guest host, someone who I've wanted to host with me one of these weeks, Dileep Rao, the actor who you may have noticed in Avatar, in Inception, in Drag Me to Hell. Anything else?
That's probably what most people know.
Okay, yeah. Dileep, thanks for coming on to the show.
No, my pleasure.
We have a little bit of Dileep's work here. Maybe Jesus, we could run a little bit of look at this. Wow. Jesus put this together just this morning. You're getting choked right there. This is Drag Me to Hell.
This is Inception right here.
Inception.
That was Drag Me to Hell a second ago. It's sort of intercut in the beginning with the splash part. That's my very first shot I ever shot in a movie.
Look at that.
This is Avatar. Yeah, we get the point.
All right, we get the point. But we have Dileep Rao with us. Dileep just back from a fan fest in Australia. What's that? You go down there and you speak to a bunch of geeks who wait online to see people from Avatar?
I mean, that is not so far from exactly the truth. Although I have to say, these are some of the nicest and most dedicated people.
Geeks.
Yes, they are geeks. But you know what? They're not rude, and they're incredibly kind, and they're diligent about.
Nobody's ever accused geeks of being rude, but they're.
Well, I'm
geeks.
just saying, I would rather spend time with geeks than with sports fanatics in a bar.
Oh, well, we have nothing in common then.
Right.
All right, so
show,
let's now go to our the first item of business here. And if you listen to me at all, you know how upset I get about the birthers and the birtherism and Donald Trump. I've gotten upset, and we've talked about it on WMB before, at Donald Trump now for quite a while. But what I bring up now. And I've gotten upset with Donald Trump since before anybody.
The
knew
hair
who Donald
alone
Trump
is
was.
deeply upsetting.
Yeah, but you can't just go after the hair because then you're
that was
losing
before.
the impact.
No,
yeah,
now
that
it's
was
substantial.
Before.
That was when he was really just honestly considered a joke. Now it's like he has some sort of following, which I find both troubling and we do have to talk about it.
Yeah, well, he's trying to get ratings because his ratings have suffered so miserably.
As any show.
And I suspect that he will not run for president. And this is
I
all
strongly suspect
a ratings ploy. But in any case, Politico ran this week a piece. It was written by Ben Smith and Byron Tao, and it is you should go to Politico. It's the history of birtherism, and it breaks it down, I think, very, very nicely. And it says at one point, the theory's proponents are a mix of hucksters and earnest conspiracy theorists, including prominently a lawyer who previously devoted himself to proving that the September 11th attacks were an inside job. So you know where these things are coming from.
Sure.
And the fact that some credence is being given to them already by, of course, Donald Trump, and we'll talk about Trump again later. But, what is it that what would you, Dileep, I mean, as someone who follows politics pretty closely, where would you go with this now if you were the Obama campaign?
I think there's no shortage of hay to be made just letting people hang themselves. And the absurdity of it, you watch the Republicans that are now, the mainstream Republicans have fled from birtherism because they are deeply afraid that it's the worst version of your primary fight, where you get the most extreme candidate who appeals to the furthest fringe of your base, and then that person becomes basically unelectable in the main election because the general needs the independents in the middle. And I think Republicans are really wary of this birtherism, and I think when the Republicans are wary of their fringe, if you're the Obama White House, you don't have to do a whole lot except generally take the position that you're in the center and that you lead from the center.
Right, but with specificity. I mean, I hear people saying to me when I denounce these birthers and I talk about what a distraction it is and how the Republicans are so good at distracting, whether it's creating something out of nothing with gays in the military, with gay marriage, with abortion when it doesn't really have to do necessarily with the politics of the day. This is not about jobs. This birther thing is not about jobs.
No.
You're actually this guy has a job wherever you may think he was born. He has a job, and it looks like he may want to keep it. But the types of people that sort of coalesce around these things, and you mentioned just a second ago, you have the people on the extreme in the Republican Party, but it's not so extreme because now you have well over 50% of Republicans
who don't believe he was born
in
crazy.
This country.
Right.
And when you look at the people that are responsible for this, and this article on Political shows it, you find there's a California dentist and lawyer named Orly Tates. He filed a round of suit saying that
Isn't it a she?
they
It's a she.
Well, it's a she. Yes, I'm sorry. And what Tate said is she unveiled a purported Kenyan birth certificate in the summer of 2009. It was clearly a hoax. The Republic of Kenya didn't exist when Obama was born. It was dated 3 years after his actual birth date. It didn't match other contemporary Kenyan birth certificates, and an anonymous blogger took credit for it, demonstrating with photos how the birthers were punked and how he produced the fake certificate. You're dealing with the sort of lowest denominator of person here within that party. Now you're seeing what Dileep was just talking about, which is these Republicans, some of them, Michael Medved specifically, are saying that it's going to drag down their own party, that they don't want to be associated with that. But here are the Democrats doing nothing about it.
You know what? I'll tell you what, and this is just my opinion. This could easily be dismissed by political experts as being stupid, but I think the great political pivot here, if you're on the left or if you're the center left, is to say, I'm going to go after actually trig trutherism as well, and talk about birther, and talk about these things as both being totally ridiculous, illegitimate occupations of our time. You know, this idea that Sarah Palin didn't give birth to her baby is as absurd as birtherism. Yet there are people like Andrew Sullivan and people who are purporting this as like, let's investigate, let's get into it. Like they act
aren't you by bringing that in just getting into the same sandbox with them? I mean,
I think what you're saying is these things. That is as absurd as anything, right?
Well, it is absurd as
anything. But then when you put them together and you go, these things are both wastes of our time. Like on the left, let's not do this. On the right, because he has to always come out of this stuff.
But the cynics are going
not getting tagged by it.
The cynics are going to say, "Oh, look, they're doing the same thing." It's it's similar to when John Kerry was running against George W. Bush, and Dick Cheney brought up Dick Cheney's daughter and how she is a respectable lesbian,
right?
And to show his lesbianism, I mean his support for lesbianism. I just feel like that's what happens. You get the cynics come out. I just sort of think the Democrats have to take a hold of the fact and respond rather than ignore.
But it already motivates us. It already motivates the base. The people, you just mentioning this right now gets everyone on our side of this very upset because it's so crazy and so without evidence. But I think that there's a whole thing about evidence to people who want to believe the craziest thing in the world.
Well,
like that Kenyan birth certificate you talked about. That Kenyan birth certificate is the lowest threshold of evidence possible. She found it on the internet, okay? Yeah. And she was willing to accept that as evidence, but will not accept the Secretary of State of Honolulu producing a copy of the certificate of live birth, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because the laws do not provide for the release of the original document. They can only do anybody.
Nobody can get that live document.
And so the law, as it exists today, they asked, why doesn't Obama produce it? The law of the state does not allow the originally produced. All you can do is trust the governmental authorities. The other thing is, don't you think when people run for president, they have to file the forms that say I was born here, they check their birth certificate. At the end of the day, that's the threshold, that's the legitimate point of it. I don't know that we get anything out of it except for letting us get upset and get ready to contribute money and go for the 2012 election. I don't think the independents in the middle are swayed by this. There's no evidence that's ever going to turn up to make it more liquid. If anything, it's solid.
Yeah, and the truth is, and we've said it here before, is that were this the case, don't you think Hillary Clinton and her campaign would have uncovered what exactly was happening?
That's exactly right.
They found nothing there,
that's exactly
and
right.
that's confirmation of the fact that this man was born in the United States.